Okay, so we're diving deep today, and this one is all thanks to you guys.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, tons of requests coming in about crypto.
I can imagine.
Yeah, and it's been a crazy year for crypto, hasn't it?
It really has, yeah.
So we're taking a look at this podcast episode you guys sent over, Crypto to the Moon.
Kitschy title.
Catchy, right? Makes you wonder if they're, just hyping things up.
Well, let's find out.
Exactly. Let's see if this moon trip has, some actual fuel or if it's all hot air.
Right.
I mean, the podcast host was like super pumped about Bitcoin and Ethereum going up.
Yeah, I heard that too.
Yeah, all this talk about the crypto market being on fire.
Yeah.
But is it really? What do you think?
Well, you can't deny things are heating up. But it's important to look past the hype, right? Like the podcast talked about institutional investment, remember?
Yeah, the big companies getting involved.
Right, and that's not just some random trend, These companies, they're not jumping in blindly. They've got analysts, they're doing their homework.
So they must see something promising, right?
Exactly. They're seeing the potential for real long-term returns. And when those big players make a move, it sends a signal. It says, hey, crypto is becoming more legitimate.
Okay, so it's not just about quick profits or, riding the wave for a short time.
Not necessarily. Of course, there will always be those looking to make a quick buck. But this institutional investment suggests a shift, a belief in crypto's staying power.
And it's interesting because the podcast also touched on the whole regulatory thing, right? Government starting to step in, trying to figure out this whole crypto world.
Yeah, that was a big part of their discussion, and it makes sense. As more people and institutions get involved, there's a growing need for clarity, for some ground rules.
So is that a good thing, though? I mean, I could see how some regulation might be needed, but could it also backfire? Stifle innovation?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's all about finding that balance. Enough regulation to protect investors and prevent fraud, but not so much that it chokes the life out of this emerging industry. Remember, one of crypto's core values is decentralization, freedom from traditional financial systems.
Right, right. So too much control could really undermine that whole idea.
Exactly. It's a tightrope walk for governments worldwide. And speaking of walking a tightrope, let's talk about market volatility. The podcast didn't shy away from that, did they?
Not at all.
Yeah.
It's kind of what makes crypto so exciting, right?
Yeah.
But also terrifying. I mean, I hear all these stories about people winning big and others losing everything.
And that's the reality of it. Volatility is a double-edged sword. It creates opportunities for massive gains, but also for gut-wrenching losses. And it's something anyone entering the crypto space needs to be prepared for.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, all this talk about buy the dip and to the moon, it can be really tempting, especially for newcomers who might feel like they're missing out.
FOMO is a powerful force, that's for sure. But here's the thing. The crypto market isn't a monolith. It's not just Bitcoin. There are thousands of altcoins out there, each with their own unique purpose, technology, and risks.
Right, so you can't just throw money at anything that's trending on Twitter.
Exactly. Due diligence is crucial. Before you invest in anything, understand the fundamentals. What problem is this project trying to solve? Who's behind it? What's the technology?
So research is key. And the podcast also talked about different investment strategies, right? Long-term holding versus short-term trading.
Yeah, they touched on that briefly, and both approaches have their pros and cons. Long-term holding, or O-dealing, as they say in the crypto world, is about having conviction in the underlying technology, believing that it's going to revolutionize industries.
So it's more about the long game, not getting spooked by short-term price swings.
Precisely. It's about weathering the storms and having faith in the future. Short-term trading, on the other hand, is a whole different beast. It's about capitalizing on volatility, riding those price waves.
Which sounds exciting, but also, maybe a little risky.
Definitely riskier. It requires a deeper understanding of technical analysis, market psychology, all that stuff.
So it's not for the faint of heart?
Not really, but it can be very rewarding if you know what you're doing. And speaking of different perspectives, remember how the podcast brought in some listener opinions?
Oh yeah, those were interesting.
Right, like that one listener who was convinced crypto would soon be used everywhere for payments.
And the other one who was all about buying those dips, like living for the volatility.
Exactly, and it shows how diverse the crypto community is. You've got the true believers, the tech enthusiasts, the risk takers, the everyday investors all coming together.
It's kind of like a microcosm of society, isn't it?
In a way, yeah. And those different viewpoints are important to consider. Because the truth is, crypto's future isn't set in stone. It's still being written.
So where do you think it's headed? Is it going to be this, revolutionary force that changes everything, or will it just sort of fade away?
It's hard to say for sure, But what we can say is that crypto is already having a real impact. We're seeing it being used in supply chains, in art and gaming, even in real estate. And those use cases are only growing.
So it's not just about speculation then.
Not anymore. Crypto is becoming increasingly integrated into our daily lives, whether we realize it or not. But that doesn't mean the speculative aspect has disappeared entirely.
Of course not. I mean, it's still the Wild West out there in many ways.
And that's what makes it so captivating. It's this constantly evolving landscape full of potential, but also full of risks. And we can't forget about the challenges, right? The regulatory uncertainty, the potential for market manipulation, the environmental concerns, all that stuff.
Right, right. It's a lot to keep track of.
Absolutely. But that's also why it's so important to stay informed, to be critical of the information you're consuming, and to really understand the underlying technologies and principles behind crypto.
So it sounds like this crypto journey, it's not for the passive observer.
Definitely not. It requires engagement, critical thinking, and a willingness to learn and adapt. And that brings us back to you, our listeners. How do you see this crypto landscape shaping your own lives? Are you a spectator, an investor, or maybe even an innovator looking to build something new in this space? The possibilities are there, and they're truly exciting.
Lots to think about. I think after this deep dive, we'll all be watching the crypto world a little more closely. Who knows, maybe some of us will even take a trip to the moon.
Maybe so. The future is unwritten, and that's what makes it so fascinating.
Well said. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. But as always, the conversation doesn't end here. Keep those questions coming, keep exploring, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
See you then.